One piece of advice, keep the joy. Put a smile on your face, enjoy every moment that you get to do it because it doesn't last long enough, regardless of how long your career is. You'll get to the point where you can't do this anymore professionally, and every day you'll look back and go, I wish I could get back onto the court and compete. So keep the joy, no matter how difficult the period is.
Welcome to Tennis Insider Club. I am Borja Duran, and together with my partner, Caroline Garcia, here is where tennis stories and life conversations intersect. Join us as we uncover the untold personal journeys of the icons of the court.
I hope you will enjoy this conversation. For me, it was a real privilege. Before beginning, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next episodes. Also, it will mean the world to me if you can share this episode with someone you think will enjoy it. Thank you! Before we dive into today's episode, I want to share something that's made a huge difference for me, both physically and mentally. Being on tour, constantly traveling, is not always easy to get all the nutrients and vitamins I need. That's why I started drinking AG1 every day. It's packed with 75 vitamins and minerals, prebiotics, probiotics, and more to help me perform at the highest levels and take care of my body. And honestly, it just makes me feel better. I love starting my day with AG1, and I think you will too. And AG1 is offering new subscribers a free $76 gift when you sign up. You will get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/tennisinsider to get this offer. That's drinkag1.com/tennisinsider to start your new year on a healthier note. Darren, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
First question, how did you start with tennis?
Yeah, great question, because my father is actually quite a famous Australian rules football player and coach back in South Australia. So in my family, Australian rules football. Do you know the game, football?
Yes, that's the one in the big oval.
Yeah, the big oval, lots of players running around everywhere and a bit of a crazy game. So that's the game I played as a young player, as a young kid, up until I was 16.
In the Stadium of Adelaide.
That's right.
Like
Adelaide Oval.
Former players and there is your...
That's right. So that's where the game is played, yeah. So we have two teams in South Australia. We have the Adelaide Crows, and we hate them. We don't like them. And my team is Port Adelaide, and that's the team that my dad played for and coached for many years. And actually, he came over here and coached one of the most famous teams, Collingwood. So you know the training facility on the other side of the tennis stadium? That's the Collingwood Football Club training facility. So he coached that team for a couple of years. So I grew up in football, played football until I was 16. My dad loved tennis. So if he could have his life again, he wanted to be Rod Laver. He was a lefty, serve volley, come in, hit volleys, but he was not very good. So he would always take me out to the tennis courts and play. We ended up buying a house many, many years ago, and he put a tennis court in the back of his house, and we'd get out there after school and play tennis. So I was playing football and tennis until I was about 15 or 16, and then had to decide which sport to play. And I was a little bit better at tennis at that stage than I was at football, so I just gravitated into tennis. And also, I think the pressure a little bit of playing football, following in his shoes back in South Australia, it was a bit easier for me to play tennis. So maybe I was a bit of a chicken and I took the easier route. And so that's how I got into tennis, and then started to play some junior tournaments quite late. I caught a little bit of a break when I was younger because there was one coach called Bob Carmichael. And Bob was my coach for my entire career, and he saw me as a 17-year-old. And we have the Australian Institute of Sport, which is where all the best players in Australia go together back in those days. And you get the 10 best male players, the 10 best female players in Australia, and you'd gather in Canberra, best facilities, best coaches, best everything, all different sports, so you're around great athletes. And I got picked to go to that. So that changed my career path a little bit. So I got a chance to practice with the best players in Australia. And I did that for 2 years. I came out of that when I was about 19 and then went pro. And so that was pretty much how I got into it.
Nice. How was that transition from playing just for fun to going to like the real deal and start competing with the best players in the world?
Yeah, it was the same as everybody really, because I spent 3 years back in my day. Now I'm old, as you know, so back in my day we had things called satellites. So we didn't have futures, and we had challenges. We didn't have futures, but we had satellites. So you'd play 5 tournaments in one satellite, 5 events, so 5 weeks. So to get 1 ATP point, you had to play 5 weeks, and then finish in the top 32 of that group. So I played 3 years of that. I played about 11 or 12 satellites, which is over 50 weeks of tennis. So Swiss satellites, Austrian satellites, Spanish satellites, all Australian, all over the place. And you're chasing results and chasing ATP points. And it wasn't until I was about 18 where I think I got my first ATP point. So I'm the same as everybody else. I spent 3 or 4 years in the smaller events, and then I think I was ranked about 300, just got into qualifying at Roland Garros and qualified at Roland Garros. We used to play qualies across at the practice facility. Exactly. I'm undefeated at Jean Von. I played qualies there twice, got through qualies twice. But that particular event, I can't remember what year it was, maybe 83 or 84. I got to the third round, qualified and got to the third round, and that was my break. And then it was huge. So I got a lot of points, ended up jumping into the top 200, and once you did that, then you have a chance to play the pro events, and then started to post a couple of good results.
How was your mentality when you entered the pro level and you started to play well in the big tournaments?
So I didn't have a problem with the mentality or the work ethic. So I was behind. So I wasn't a great junior. I broke into tennis late. As I said, I was 19 or 20 when I broke into the top 200, and that's late back in my day because we had players like Becker winning Wimbledon at 17, Wilander, Borg, McEnroe, Connor. All these guys were great players in their teenagers. So I felt like I was always playing catch up a little bit to the rest of the field. So I worked really hard. I had a great mentality on court, and that's why I won a lot of my matches. Is I just competed really, really hard. And so wasn't super talented, but if I could find a weakness in somebody's game, I was like, I don't know if you remember Brad Gilbert as a player. So Brad got to number 4 in the world, and he wrote this book called Winning Ugly. And Winning Ugly, it's a great book, it's a great read. And Winning Ugly is all about the way I played, because I wasn't really pretty as a tennis player, but I could find ways to win tennis matches by just annoying opponents.
That one maybe.
It's a really good book. And Brad was a much better version of Winning Ugly than I was, and he actually wrote a book about that, which is a really good read. So that's kind of my style. I was like a poor man's Pat Rafter. Do you remember Pat Rafter playing at all? He might be even a little bit too...
Let's say I have some clips here and there.
There you go. Okay.
And he was very well known for his serve and volley and volley.
He was well known for his good looks. That's what he was well
known
for.
And the sunscreen here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I did that. I was the original sunscreen guy, and I had the kick serve like Pat, and I had a little bit of a dodgy forehand like Pat, and I had the slice backhand like Pat, and I'd come in. So I tell my wife, I'm like the poor person Pat Rafter. Everything he does and the way he looks is better than me, but I was similar to the way he used to play.
And do you think, because now as a coach, you're very well known for your tactical, what you can bring on tactical level, and do you think you took also your experience as a player, like you say, winning ugly also, it's part of being very wise tactically? Do you think this experience helped you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it does, for sure. I think that tennis in general is a great problem-solving sport. So there are talented tennis players that go out there and don't have to think too much and just play, and they can win through their talent, and it comes quite naturally to them, but it never really came that naturally to me. So I had to problem solve in my head what was going on to the court, how was my game matching up against my opponent's game, was I making inroads, was I able to stay neutral in points, or was I able to find weaknesses? So I think you'll find that a lot of the coaches that have longevity in the game, the ones that struggled a little bit on the talent side, but they competed really hard. So they had to analyse it within their brain how to work it out. So I think that certainly helps when you break into coaching, for sure.
Yes, at the end, I guess that talent is, as you say, it will help you win some games, but not maybe tournaments, right? It's hard to feel it so good for 2 weeks in a row, right? So you need more than that.
Yeah, and I think also it doesn't mean that the really talented greatest players in the world are not good coaches, because I think some of them are great coaches. You have Ljubicic, who's done an amazing job, and he was 2 or 3 or 4 in the world as well, and but very analytical in the way he goes about it. So everybody's a little bit different, and some coaches bring different strengths to the table as well. So I think there are 3 facets to coaching. So it's obviously the technical, and then you have the tactical, and then you have the emotional. It's the ability to communicate messages, explain yourself well, so the player understands exactly what you're trying to accomplish, and you're selling the big picture, the belief in what you're doing to your player. And that's something that you learn as you go. You're not very good at that when you start coaching. And as you get a little more experience and you work with different players, then I think you become much better at that as well. So I always say that when you're interviewing for a coach, whenever your next coach is, when you're interviewing people and they talk about the technical, and the emotional, and a coach says to you, no, I'm really good at all of those, then you need to run for the hills. Because nobody is good. And I'm not so great at the technical. I've always known that. I'm working with a guy now with Jannik called Simona Halep, and he's awesome at the technical. And so a lot of the technical changes, we talk about it obviously, but a lot of the technical changes that he's making with Jannik, I leave it to him because he sees that big picture a little bit clearer than I do. And then we're both okay at the tactical, and I'm a little more better at the emotional and the communication and how to deliver a message and whether or not it's getting through and keeping a good culture within the team and making sure everyone's sharing information and we're all working together because I have that experience. So together we've been a good mix so far for Jannik. But it's really important to make sure that when you are interviewing and talking to coaches that they don't sell you on something they're not. Yeah, which you probably had that before.
Yeah, it's true that there is always as a player, you have some things you do better than others, but it's also true for everyone in the world anyway. But for coaches, you can feel that someone is better in understanding you, and sometimes technically maybe it's a little bit less good, but you have to take the best of everyone, and it's true that no one is perfect for sure, but for sure it's there is more and more team where it's two coaches.
That's right.
And it's very interesting to see because sometimes already with one coach it's to have the dynamic and everyone to understand each other, it's not easy. Yeah. But it's good when in the team with Jannik you're able to do it with everyone understand their position, what they are good at, and I think we are going to see more and more now.
I think so, and I think because the money's a little bit better in tennis now and the top players are making better money, they can afford to invest more into their careers. And it's why also the window for coaching in tennis is maybe 3-4 years. And if it goes any longer than that, it becomes more of a coach / manager, protector, just making the player feel good role, because there's about a 3 or 4 year window where you can impart everything you know. And that's the thing about coaching also, is that the better style of coaching is to coach a player to teach them, so they can problem solve for themselves. Yeah. And so the player will get to a point after 3 years and go, you're about to say something? I know what you're about to say. and you do it already, and then you go onto the court. So there's not as much need for you to be around that particular coach. And after 3 or 4 years, it's time for somebody else, a different voice, different inspiration, different message. The other way of coaching is to have that player rely on the coach. Let me tell you what to do. Not explain to you what to do, just I'm going to tell you, take the forehand cross court or come in more or whatever it may be, but you're not really explaining it. So that ends up where the player relies on the coach too much for the tactical side of things, and the coach is cementing their position with that player for a long time, but not really helping the player become better through problem solving.
Yeah, you don't allow him to grow at the end.
Exactly.
He's reliable, has relied on you to
You're securing
deliver.
your job instead of... And it's a tough thing, right? Also because we're working one-on-one with a player, the player pays the coach. Yeah. It's an interesting dynamic in tennis that a lot of sports don't have, but the better coaches, I feel like, are the ones willing to coach themselves out of a job, as crazy as that might seem.
Yeah, to be able to put the player as a priority, and
That's
not
right.
yourself. Yeah, which is kind of
you sound like you make a good coach, actually.
Against human nature, kind of. No, it's like kind of being a good father, right? At the end, you have to be selfless, and the priority number one is that person grows and not your goals or your ego. Yeah, interesting. How was your process from tennis player to coach? Did you know since the beginning that you wanted to do it, or it was like a bit more random?
So I finished early. I finished when I was 25. I'd had about 12 or 13 knee
25?
surgeries. Yeah.
Wow.
My knees were bad when I was young, so I struggled physically. And then at 25, I was out for 3 years actually. And I came back for about 6 months when I was 28 and then busted my knee again at Wimbledon. So I had a bit of a rough trot with my playing career with injuries. I grew really late also, which was a problem because I worked way too hard. We didn't have the scientific training techniques now. Back then it was like run as hard as you can, there's no pain, through the brick wall. And I did it, I came from that football environment. So, and I was growing at the same time, and I had all sorts of problems physically. So now, if I was to go back and do my career again, I'd get a good physical trainer, go much slower, and then protect my body much more, which everybody does now. So I got lucky, incredibly lucky. I finished when I was 25, came back a little bit when I was 28, and then I spent a couple of years not knowing what I was going to do. I invested in a small bar in Adelaide, and I learned to pull beers and be a waiter and all that sort of stuff. And I didn't have a lot of money, because I spent a lot of money trying to rehab and get back. So I got a knock on the door when I was about 31 years of age from a 12-year-old kid called Lleyton Hewitt. And he came through my door and said, "Can we hit some tennis balls?" And so I got it, and I was still okay where I could play. And that was my jumping into the fire experience for my first time coaching with him. He already was an incredible player. I was dating the lady that I married, Victoria, my wife, but back then I was even dating her. So I remember she was in the kitchen. We had a tennis court at the back. She was in the kitchen, and I came back after hitting with him for a couple of hours, and I'd hit with some other South Australian juniors as well. And she said to me, "You look good." And I said, "Oh my God, this kid is outrageously good." He was little, but super fast, super competitive. And he had a different coach, Peter Smith, and worked with Peter throughout his entire career. And Peter was the technical coach, and Peter had given him incredibly good technique. And I enjoyed every second of those 2 hours. And so we just ended up hitting 3 or 4 times a week for the next 5 or 6 years. And then when he got to about 16, 17, he asked if I'd go full time with him. So that's how I got into it. Pure luck.
Yeah, so it was more like casual, coincidence.
Well, like life, being in the right place at the right moment. That's
one door closes with the playing career, and this one opens. So it's like that movie Sliding Doors, right? The sliding doors moment.
And so I guess as he was very good already young, he had very big goals, and for you to start to coach a player like him was probably not easy, because at the end you have been hitting with him for a while but not coaching. How was the responsibility to go and probably try to win slams?
So he was outside the top 100 when we first went on to the tour. I was raw. So any player that goes straight from playing to coaching, they understand the game, they understand the technical, the tactical, but they make mistakes. And I made lots of mistakes. So I look back on my time with Lleyton, and I describe this a little bit like, it's like jumping into a Porsche car with him. So we jump into the Porsche, and you're having a race around the track with 100 of your mates. And you've got one of the fastest cars, but you're starting at the back of the pack. And all of a sudden, this kid's going zoom, 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 zoom. Halfway through the race, he's up to 20 in the world, and he's doing incredibly good. And he looks over to me and goes, "I've got no brakes. What do we do?" And I look at him and go faster. That was kind of what we did. I didn't know how to fix problems back then. So whether it be problems with dealing with the family, or with the tournaments, or with the ATP, or with the attitude on the court, or with problems that we're having with his game and whatnot, I was winging it. I was just going by the seat of my pants. He was going by the seat of his pants. And this Porsche, without brakes, ended up getting to #1 in the world. I don't know how, but at some point, the Porsche is going to crash, right? At some point. And that's kind of what happened with us. So if I could go back and have my time again, there was a lot of stuff that we both did right, and he was an incredible player. But there would be things I would do differently, and I'd be able to handle those moments differently to make sure that maybe we'd have more longevity.
Tennis-wise, or with things
both.
that are happening off the court?
Yeah, both. Both physically, tennis-wise, dealing with the environment around him as well.
Because for a kid at such a young age, to have so much pressure, so much expectations, has to be so complicated to deal with it at one point.
Yeah, but it got to the point where we ended up parting ways. It was the right thing for him and me. The next year he went on and won Wimbledon, finished #1 in the world again, so it was definitely the right thing for him. He got fresh energy, new inspiration. I remember about 6 or 8 weeks after we stopped, I got a call to go and coach Agassi. And there's a long story behind that, but I won't bore you with that story. But the very first tournament that I was the coach of Agassi, he played Hewitt in the final
That's a
of
classic
San Jose.
That's a classic.
Yeah, and I was so nervous for that match. And look, it was uncomfortable, for sure. Uncomfortable for him. And I don't even remember him playing, but as a competitor, he was maybe the most in-your-face competitor. Lleyton, yeah. So that match was about beating Andre, but probably about giving it to me as well. But it was one of the best matches of 2002. It was 7-6 in the third. Andre played incredibly well. Andre had trouble against him playing him. It was part of the reason why he hired me as well, is that Andre was 32 years of age, getting towards the end of his career. Lleyton was number one, and he wanted to work out how to beat Lleyton. So he went onto the court with all these tactics, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. He had a break in the third. Amazing match, and Lleyton ended up winning. And yeah, first person he looked at after the match was me. So, but it was a great match, and that's, some rivalries and a little bit of spice in tennis is good. So, yeah, incredible. And that goes to coaching as well. Is that one of the things with Andre was already 7-time major champion, Olympic gold medaler, already won number one in the world, legend of the game, and so. The challenges of coaching a 32-year-old that was already up there was completely different to jumping in the Porsche.
Yeah, the type of job is like black and white, no? From being a kid who has to learn everything to like someone who probably can teach you a lot of things, right?
He taught me everything.
Yeah.
He taught me how to communicate, how to analyze matches, how to break down, how to talk to a player in tough moments. He taught me much more about coaching than I taught him about tennis. But one of the things that we really concentrated, and this is more an extension of Brad Gilbert. Mm-hmm. Brad spent 8 years with Andre. They had a remarkable career together. I think they won 6 majors together. 8 years is a long time. It just got to a point where, as I said before, Andre just needed a fresh voice. Mm-hmm. I come in, I continued the work of Brad's in that sometimes Andre would play into the hands of his opponent. So Andre always wanted to walk onto the court and play his style, his tennis, because he knew that his style of tennis, a bit like you, his style of tennis was the best style of tennis in the world when he played well, and no one could beat him, and he didn't care what the other person did, he just wanted to go through that opponent. Mm-hmm. But sometimes there are players that play well when you give them your best stuff, and he had issues against certain players where if we sent him onto the court and said, come on, junk the ball down the middle a little bit, use a slice backhand, play with a little bit of height, don't hit the big first serve, play with a little more kick, get the ball outside the pocket. They move well into the corners, but they're not so good in the middle of the court and they can't open. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do. And Andre started winning these matches and he'd walk off the court and go, I didn't feel good about today's match. And it was so, why? What was the score? Yeah, I know I won 6-2, 6-2, but I didn't. But
he didn't like winning ugly, right?
Yeah, exactly. But last time you played this person, it was 7-6 in the third, 3 hours, and you walked off the court and said, I played really good today. But you're making life tough for yourself sometimes. So he had to get smarter as he got older and also he was a 32-year-old, and he had to protect his body a little bit more. So whenever he could sort of cut a corner with getting himself away from that physicality, we would take it because it's like putting a little bit of money in the bank. So that was my main role with Andre, is to make him a smarter, more effective tennis player. And lo and behold, one of the players that he had to play much smarter against was Lleyton. And I remember in 2005, now Andre's 35 now, 34, 35, 2004 maybe. Classic example of this was that Andre played Roddick in a 3-hour semi-final in Cincinnati in the semi-final. 7-6 in the third, one of the greatest matches I've ever seen. Both players played really well. Brad was the coach of Roddick. I had a beer with Brad after the match. Yeah, Brad. We walked off the court. Brad's sitting there going, oh, it was an unbelievable match. And I'm like, so happy. Yeah, it was a great match. Do you want to talk about it? No, I don't want to talk about it. And so the next day he's got to come back, and Andre's done. He's dead. And the next day he's got to come back and play Lleyton Hewitt in the final of Cincinnati. And I said to him that morning of the match, this is our chance. This is our chance to put everything we've spoken about into full effect, to see whether or not you can win a match playing basically, not on one leg, but he certainly wasn't moving nearly as well as he could have. And Lleyton had a pretty easy draw through to the final, so he was ready for that. And Andre did. He went onto the court. He played so not like Andre. He just did stuff that Andre never does, and he won in 3 sets. It was amazing, and we walked off the court, and honestly, it was one of the most satisfying coaching moments that I've ever had. he'd done way more in the game, but to win that tournament the way he did, that was a really satisfying moment. So I guess it's the little things you look back on.
Yeah, well, the adaptability, like to see that he was able to adapt and do this ugly tennis or different tennis, it's a nice gift for you.
And so you went from Lleyton, who is like a young, super motivated player, to Andre, who is like a way older player who went through a lot with his relation with tennis.
Yes.
And like we all know, I read the book or found it unbelievable. And I was like, so how did you help him with that relation with tennis and find that lightness and joy?
His relationship with tennis is complicated, if you've read the book. There are days when he never found the right balance. So the right balance for him is that you can get the joy from winning equals the pain from losing. And he always found the pain from losing much harder than the highs from winning. So he didn't enjoy the winning moments nearly as much as he suffered through the losing. And that's why he struggled a little bit with tennis. I think once he met Steffi Graf, things changed a little bit because he found some balance in life. He found an incredible person. I don't know if you know Steph, but Steph is one of the most grounded, humble champions we've ever seen. Easiest person in the world to speak to, funny as anything, and a family person who does anything for her family and anybody else's family too, by the way. She's an amazing woman, and he's met an incredible woman, and I think she grounded him and gave him purpose. And along with that purpose, he started to raise a lot of money for underprivileged children for education. So I think he's opened now about 150 charter schools around America for kids that can't afford an education. He has an amazing charter school in Las Vegas. So he started to play for them. And he found purpose within his life. So it wasn't about him anymore. It was about how can I change people's lives? How can I do the best by my family, my kids? And he had real purpose when he woke up every morning. So I got him at a good time in his life and his career, which I was very fortunate for. Brad had him through the difficult moments, difficult years, but they're still best friends. They get on incredibly well, and it's been, he's a remarkable man. He'd give you the shirt off his back. Anything that you need, he'll get it done for you. And he really cares about the game of tennis. Even now, I could name 7, 8, 9 players that he's worked with and helped over the last 10 years, and he does it all for nothing. Doesn't charge them a single cent. If you come to Vegas, he'll get onto the court with you. If you need some help, he'll jump on the phone with you. He's a remarkable man. Not many like him in the world.
He wants to give back, that's
exactly, yeah.
Nice.
It's a good evolution when you heard from where he come from, it's good to be able to...
He's incredibly intelligent. Actually, a little bit too intelligent sometimes for his own good because, he can complicate it like no one else that I've met in tennis. And even from a coaching point of view, when he's coaching, he'll send me some messages sometimes, and I'll read the message that he's sending to his player, and I'm going, that's pretty complicated. You know, I'm a little more black and white than he is, and try to simplify a little bit. But he's right in everything he says. He's absolutely 100% right. But you have to find a balance of how difficult do you make it for your player to understand. So, yeah, he's if you get a chance to do one of these with him,
we love it. Yeah, we're trying to find our way.
You'll be fascinated. Yeah.
So you think in a way like being less obsessed with tennis or with the results was what helped him to like be happier on court and be able to keep winning?
Honestly, you'd have to ask him that.
Okay.
He's once he found the purpose, once he found a reason to get up in the morning and do what he does. One of the great things about him also is he didn't like to waste time. So he was a busy man with everything that he was doing. So when I started with him, he was 32 years of age. He finished when he was 36. So we spent 5 years of incredible tennis together. The last year was tough because he was struggling with the back. Yeah, so even at the US Open, you read the story, he was taking cortisone shots in the back and just to get onto the court to be able to...
You could see he was not the same player anymore.
Exactly.
The end was, 32 already at this time in tennis was old.
It's like 40 now.
Yeah. So like 35, etc. But
yeah.
It's true that at the end he kept playing a bit to say goodbye, but he was not the same player, and it's sad to see for him after such a great career.
But he had that one match against Baghdadis at the US Open, which was the perfect goodbye. I know he ended up losing to Benjamin Becker in the next round, but for us, that match against Baghdadis was the perfect goodbye. And the way he played, the drama of the match, it was the perfect way. And even his dad, came up to me after the match and said, "That's it, pull him out," after the match. And we all did speak to Andre about maybe pulling out after the match, but he wanted to finish with a racket in his hand, so which was good. So, no, a remarkable man. The purpose of getting up every morning and making sure that he was able to give back to the kids, especially at that time it was in Las Vegas, that couldn't afford an education. The story behind his preparatory academy, the school, is quite amazing as well. I think he's raised over $100 million in charity money that goes into that college, so it's forever funded for the rest of history. But he didn't like to waste time because he was such a busy man. So we never practiced more than 90 minutes on the court, hour and a half, that was it. And then we'd go into the gym with Gil Reyes. Gil Reyes has an incredible saying, plan the work and work the plan. And we stuck to that theory for 5 years. Quite often we'd go in for a gym session and it would last 4 hours and we'd only work out for maybe 30 minutes, and for 3.5 hours we'd end up just talking. That was an education in itself. You know, as you know, if you can form a bond with the people that you work with and become more than friends and share stories and share emotions and share those struggles that you're going through and try to work your way through them, it's probably more important than hitting tennis balls, right? Yeah.
I like it. I think it's nice. What would you say your biggest learning will be with Andre?
Prepare. Be prepared. Yeah, I wasn't prepared I was prepared in the sense that I knew all the players he was playing. I'd pretty much just come off the tour. I'd been coaching Lleyton for 3 or 4 years full-time on the tour. So I knew to a certain degree how to prepare a player for a match. But he took it to a new level. So he was more on the lines of playing Richard Gasquet, another French person. And I remember this match actually. So I went and scouted Gasquet's match. And so we sit down and we're about to talk about how to play Gasquet. And it wasn't about how to play him. He wanted answers to questions. So he said, if I serve him wide on the first court, is he going to push that ball with a slice, or is he going to take a big full swing? And where is he going to stand for that? Is he going to back up, or is he going to take that around about the service line? And is he going to cut the corner a little bit, or is he going to move laterally to return that? And if he makes that return, is he going to back up a couple of steps where if I take my backhand cross court, I can push him deep into that corner where I might be able to... No, but this is like 100 of these questions. And so I had to prepare for that role. And so he was so analytical that he just wanted to know the nuances of what maybe to expect. The greatest thing about Andre is if something didn't go according to what I said, he didn't blame anybody. He just adjusted. Whereas a lot of players today, if you tell a player, watch the wide serve, and they go bang down the middle, they'll look over and go, exactly. That comes all the time now, but he never did that, never ever did it, because he was such a professional that, okay, that didn't work out. Maybe 2 or 3 times it happens. Now I need to start covering that one. And he made adjustments. Yeah, he was a pro, a total pro that accepted responsibility every time he stepped on the court, which I totally respect.
That's awesome.
Ivan Lubicic told us the same things about Roger Federer, that they had to prepare the match in a way that, okay, if I serve there, what happened? Like a bit like Andre looks like. So.
Playing tennis like chess, kind of, no?
Yeah, it is, but it is a chess game,
It is a
right?
chess game,
You know,
yes.
it's, if I'm coaching you, and you're playing, let's say, Rabakina, big server, whatnot, and I know you like to be aggressive on the return of serve, and you like to stand in, you like to go after the serve, and you're missing too many returns. So coaching is about showing you a different way, not necessarily telling you what to do, but giving you options about what to try. And I come over to you, Caro, and I say, maybe we need to back up a couple of steps because you're playing someone and you're making too many mistakes. So back up. And you look at me and go, Darren, this is the way I play, you know, because every now and then I hit a good return and I get a free point, and this is where I'm standing. So I'm giving away my greatest strengths. No, I'm going to stay with what I do best. But if I come up to you and say, Caro, this is what's happening. You're playing someone that's serving 4 or 5 miles an hour faster. We don't have the time to take that big swing. We've got 2 choices here. Firstly, you can shorten your swing and block it back. The problem with that is you're on the baseline on the return. If you don't hit it perfect, you have to back up 2 steps, and their +1's going to hurt you straight away, and that's not a good place to defend from. Or we can take 2 steps back and take your full swing and go after it. I know you're not going to hit as many winners, and you're not going to win as many free points, but then they might start taking a little bit of pace off their first serve, knowing they're not getting the free points they were getting. And then as they throw that ball toss up, you can go back in and surprise them every now and then. And we could throw off their rhythm a little bit. So if I say that to you, you're going to look at me and go, okay, we change it, mate. We try it at least. But if I tell you what to do, hey, we need to do this, you're probably going to be a bit stubborn, like all great players are, and go, no, this is the way I need to play. So that's coaching. It's about the way you communicate a message and show the big picture, and not necessarily telling the player what to do, but giving the player options. And then you'll go, all right, we try it for a few points. And if it doesn't work, then I go back in.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, for sure. It's communication and how you present to players and like.
Correct.
And not feeling forced usually, helps you like to be a bit more open-minded, right? When they tell you have to do this, you're a bit more closed. Than when,
but I was too. I was exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah, but not even tennis players. I think everyone, Like when your parents are like, you have to do this, and it feels like a rule, you are like a rebel immediately. If they give you options and they teach you this is the right place, you choose, then okay, I will do it.
Exactly.
After Agassi, you took like a different kind of role, and you went more like into consulting with Adidas.
Yeah.
How was that like change from being always with one player to like seeing different game styles, different personalities? How was that experience?
So I loved it. I really did. It was a great program. I think it also was attractive for, we call it Adidas. You guys call it Adidas? No, Adidas, right? Adidas, yeah. So
I'm not German, so I don't know.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
We say it the way you want.
Actually, the Dassler story is a great, it's a different subject.
Exactly.
The two brothers is an amazing story as well, but Adi Dassler was the guy's name, so Adidas. They put a program together that not only helped the Adidas players, and we weren't necessarily the full-time coaches of any player, but if a player didn't have a coach, a little bit like Ljubicic with you at the moment, where he comes along every now and then and just gives you a little bit of advice, or he gives some mentoring to the coach that you have in place. So it was great. The only problem with that program was if an Adidas player was playing an Adidas player, we had to step back. Okay. And we couldn't do anything, which I guess it's the same with you playing a French player, right? Would Ljubicic be able to help you match plan against another French player?
Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. We are not that many French players.
So that was the only handcuffs on that particular role, and we did it for about 5 years, and I got to work with a range of players, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, both male and female players. And it taught me a lot as a coach because I got to talk to different players and different coaches in different environments, and I also got to work along for another 5 or 6 years with Gil Reyes. So Gil was the strength and conditioning trainer for the Adidas program. Oh, okay. A lot of players would come into Las Vegas, and we do more training camps in Las Vegas, and just about every Adidas player came through there. So I ended up working with Andy Murray for quite a period of time when he didn't have a coach or a main coach there for a while. And then also part of my job was, if they didn't have a coach, is to help them get the right coach, to place the right coach with the right personality with the player. So I helped bring Ivan Lendl together with Andy in that period, and a bunch of other coaches and players as well. So yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it.
Nice. What advice would you give to a player when they're trying to find a new coach? Would you give them any specific advice on what to look?
Yeah, you have to ask a lot of questions. I think you have to treat your role as the player more like a CEO of a company now, and you have to interview. It helps, this is coming from a coach, it helps 1,000% if the player picks up the phone and calls a potential coach and not an agent. If an agent calls up, I'm likely to say, no, it's okay, don't worry.
You cannot delegate the most important decision that you have to take, right? It has to be coming from you and the decision. Yeah.
So if you're interested in a coach or potentially 3 or 4 coaches, if the player picks up the phone and you talk directly to the player from a coaching perspective, that leaves a big impact as far as I'm concerned. So I think that's really important. But have a bunch of questions, ask the questions. You want to try to draw as much information as you can out of that coach to see how they handle different situations. And even if you don't go with those particular coaches, you're asking questions about your game, right? You're saying, how do you see my game? Where do you think my improvements will come from? Do you like
free
my
tips?
No, absolutely, 100%.
No, for sure. I mean,
every other sport does it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're hiring someone for your company, now you ask them to do a case study or something, and if you don't hire them, you have some tips or some perspective from customer. So
correct, exactly.
Nice, good point.
Yeah.
And then you went with Simona.
Yep.
How was that change from coaching like two men to going to a woman who was quite young still by the moment, not like 23 or 24?
She was, yeah.
How was that?
She was already a great player. She was already top
Number
5.
3 in the world, number 2 when you start working together?
Yeah, our first tournament was Indian Wells.
Okay.
But that was, so I worked with her for 10 months through the program.
She was Adidas.
That's right. So the first tournament through the program that I was with her was Indian Wells, and she won it in dramatic fashion, though, too, by the way. I love Simona. She's an amazing person. To describe what she was able to accomplish is difficult because I think she'll probably go down as Romania's greatest ever tennis player, maybe Romania's greatest ever athlete. You have Nastasi, who won a couple of majors, was number 1 in the world, maybe not as long as what Simona was for, but Simona won Wimbledon, and she beat maybe the greatest of all time in the final of Wimbledon, Serena. But also, tennis didn't come easy to her as well. You played her many times. You had wins against her, you had losses against her, but you knew every time you walked onto the court against her, it was going to be a battle. Like, you had to fight for every damn point. And she had this mentality, this fighter mentality that was remarkable because even as a junior, she didn't have a lot of power. She couldn't win points easily from the back of the court. She didn't have a big serve. She didn't like to come to the net. She didn't like to play drop shots. There's a lot about her game that she didn't like.
She just liked it to run.
She just loved to run and compete.
Do passing shots and like.
Yeah, and she did it incredibly well. So when I started with her, we had to try to find ways to make life a little bit easier for her because otherwise you just wear yourself out. She has one of the most amazing records where I think she spent 5 or 6 years in the top 5, didn't come out of it, which for her style of play, that every match she played was really tough.
Yeah, it's exhausting to be like player like this.
Yeah, so
much effort.
And so there's that side of it, it's the performance side of it, but then the pressure side of it, which I guess unless you're from Romania, you don't really feel, but from a country like Romania, she's the highest profile athlete, especially at that time. Everybody wanted her to go number 1 in the world. Everybody wanted her to win a major. She was so close so many times and had some heartbreaking losses in majors. The one at the French Open against Ostapenko when she was up a set and break was devastating. Maybe my worst ever coaching moment happened after that. I'll tell you about that because I think it's a good lesson, is that because I'm the experienced person within our team, she suffered that loss against Ostapenko and she was playing for her first major, playing to be number 1 in the world for the first time, so there was a lot riding on it. And the pressure coming from the people in Romania, and even, you could feel it. It was just intense around the place. And I knew she was destined to win at some point, but you never know, right? You've been to 3 finals and you go, I'm not sure it's ever going to happen for her if you let this one get away from you. And so I decided through that period that because I was the oldest, most experienced, that I was going to be positive, that I'm going to just sell her positive story. Simo, it's all good. We're going to get there. We keep fighting. We get back onto the court. We keep working hard. We keep evolving your game. Put a smile on your face. Let's enjoy the tennis. But it was the wrong style of coaching for her because she was suffering inside with doubt, with the match that she lost, with the fears, with everything. And I was showing no empathy. I wasn't suffering with her. I was suffering, but I wasn't showing I was suffering. I was positive, and she wanted me to be miserable like she was. But it's true, because misery loves misery in the tough moments. And all she wanted to see from me that I was feeling as bad as she was. And so we went through the next 6 or 8 weeks where I was super positive and thinking I'm doing the right thing as the leader of the team, and I'm just running her into a hole. Yeah. And so she ended up taking a few tough losses. A couple of more matches she played were for number 1. She lost those. Then she played Sharapova in the first round of the US Open. Huge match. Lost to Sharapova. Actually played quite well. Lost to Sharapova in the first round of the US Open. And after the match, she comes over and sits down. She's got tears rolling down her face, and she asked me how'd I play, and I started to talk about the technicals, and I was an idiot. And yeah, you play, but maybe we. She didn't want to hear it, and she got up, and I was halfway through a sentence and walked off in tears. And as she's walking off in tears, the physical trainer, Teo Cecil, who was the physical trainer, you remember him, the big guy, exactly, was walking over and he's looking at me and he's going, as he's following Simona to the locker room, and I'm like, And he comes over to me later and he goes, hey, listen, I know what you're trying to do, but I think sometimes you've just been a bit too tough on her. You know, she's a young girl. No one expected her to be a great player from Constanța in Romania. She's doing her amazing things. Maybe sometimes you just need to give her a hug and tell her you love her.
Yeah. And validate her feelings as well.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not. So I thought about it for a day or so, and I ended up, the next day I saw her and I walked over to her, and I did. I was wrong. I walked over and I said, hey, this is all on me. The last 8 weeks is on me. I made such a mistake. I tried to be positive and whatnot, but I know that you're suffering, and I'm suffering inside. And I started having tears, and I gave her a hug. She was crying, and she goes, I've been waiting for this hug for 3 months. You know, I'm so happy you gave me this. All right. I said, if you want to fire me now, I'll walk away. No, it's okay. 2 weeks later, she goes and plays Sharapova in Asia, beats her 2-2. Nice. Like, all the pressure was gone. Everything was relieved from her shoulders, and she could start to enjoy her tennis again. So it's a different way of coaching, not my style of coaching at that point, but she taught me a really big lesson.
But I think that's what makes a great coach, no? That adaptability to be able to give what each player needs, right? Because maybe it's easy to connect with someone and be a great coach with player A, but to be able to be very good coach with player B, who might be like a complete different human being, that's like the real challenge, I guess. Yeah.
And then she gave me the next 12 months when she went and won Roland Garros and beat Sloane in the final. But for sure, my most emotional moment, sitting in a coach's box for sure. My most emotional moment as a tennis player or coach. So seeing the journey she went on, how she struggled, the fight she showed. She ended up losing the Australian Open final in between that as well to Wozniak, and she had a chance to win that one as well. So remarkable young woman. She deserves all the credit in the world.
Yeah, I mean, as a coach, and also like when you're a team around the players, sometimes you have to take kind of bet, and I guess you imagine that being positive, even like kind of faking it was a good one, but sometimes we don't know at the end like
that's right.
What is really like going on inside, and sometimes we bet is a good one, or we imagine stuff, and the most important is to like realize it and then
try to listen and understand how that person feels, right, and not try to guess how they're feeling.
Honest bet.
I think the difference, and I get asked the question a lot about the difference between men and women in coaching as well. I think the only real difference, same game, same pressures, same size court, same everything. Sometimes the women don't have the ability to finish points like men do. If a male player gets up a set in a break, you can relax a little bit and rely on your serve to get to the finish line. It doesn't happen much in the women's game. So you have to continue to be mentally strong to stay on the same tactical plan that got you up a set in a break. And quite often you'll rush a little bit. There's the finish line, let's get to the finish line. But you lose the patience a little bit. And that's just because of the power of the game. But the other difference, I think the men see the big picture a little bit clearer than what the women do. So one of the things that I worked really hard on Simona is don't worry about the set score in practice. We don't care about the set score, because if we're working on the things that are going to make us better in the long term, I don't care if you win this practice set or not. And quite often, I don't know if you're like this or not, quite often in the female game, not all the players, but the day will be a good day or a bad day depending on whether you won the practice set. No matter how well you played or not, it doesn't really matter. And so there are a lot of players like that. So to educate that it's not about practice, practice is there for us to improve, to become better, to keep working on the stuff that we need to work on. Yes, if you need a little bit of confidence to win a practice set, all right, let's treat this one like a match and have a different psychology to the way we're going about it. But not everything is about winning that practice set.
No, I know what you mean. And
you do?
Yeah, I know what you mean. What happened to me since very long time is like I kind of play in practice as I play in matches. So I play very aggressive and everything. And there is a lot of girls who play way more aggressive in practice than they do in matches. So I ended up sometimes facing practices where I was getting like winners from the other one all over, going to the net, passing shot all over. So I was like, my record in practice is terrible. Record practice terrible.
But did it upset you, or you knew what was going on?
Sometimes I was a bit confused because I was like, I don't understand, like I'm getting winners all over, and I know that I have to improve a bit my defense, but like in matches I'm not that bad neither. And in practice I was like, I'm terrible this week. It's like, and then like a couple of times my coach shared that with me, and like I was like, this girl in match, she doesn't play like this. And it's true that sometimes it can affect you a little bit, and then you have to understand. But it's true sometimes it's a bit more different.
So good opportunities with that as well. So if you're playing somebody that you know they don't play like that in a match, so you don't worry so much. But then, all right, how do you problem solve the practice? Okay, you're playing someone that comes out there and they're playing Caroline Garcia, and they're going out there and they're just ripping the ball. And they have no pressure because they rank 50 in the world, you rank 4 in the world, and they're going out there. So, all right, as a player, you treat it like a match situation. All right, do I need to get the ball out of their strike zone? Do I need to concentrate on one side of the court a bit more? Great opportunities within those practice sessions to try to problem solve as well. So every practice gives you an opportunity to get better.
Yeah. But yeah, it's funny when you see men's practicing or warming up, like they will hit the ball 3 meters behind the baseline, but they don't care at all. They start to cry.
I remember the first day, actually I have a funny story about Simona. So I'm working for Adidas, I turn up to Indian Wells. She's booked a late practice. I'm driving from Las Vegas to Indian Wells. She writes to me, when are you arriving? I said, I'm getting there about 4 o'clock. She goes, okay, I'll book a practice at 5. Like, all right, no time to settle in. And so I walk straight onto the court, and Victor Ainita, her Romanian coach, is there. So I'm helping Victor as well. And I'm standing behind the court, and she's hitting the ball great, crushing the ball. And she starts complaining about a forehand. So I say to her, all right, let's hit a few forehand cross courts. And she goes, bang, 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 like 14. Great forehand cross courts. And then she hits one into the net, like, not in the tape, but just under the net. The racket goes across the court. And I look at her, I said, what just happened? You just hit 14 great forehands and you missed one. And she goes, nah, I'm not feeling the forehand. I'm not feeling the forehand. And I looked at Victor, and Victor's going like this. So that was my walking into the fire with Simona Halep.
Now you know you're not alone, Caro.
But I don't know. I mean, that's now that I don't know. Maybe I'm more experienced, or when I hear also coaches talk about it, feels like it's more women's problem. That one.
That one is for sure. Yeah, that one is. Yeah.
It's a funny one.
And then you went up to coach Jannik.
Yeah.
How's been this experience for you?
It's been different for me. It's a little more of the role that I had with Adidas than it is the one-on-one roles that I had with the other 3 players, but super fulfilling. I commentated Jannik 5 or 6 years ago for ESPN, sitting on the side of the court, and went, oh my God, this kid is good. Like just the way he hits the ball, the sound of the ball that comes off his strings, the way he moves. Like
looks so easy how he plays.
Oh my God, yeah. He's open stance slide on the back, and he's always had it from the skiing days. So yeah, I knew he was going to be a great player, and he had a great coach in Riccardo Piatti as well, who I knew that he was going to be super successful for him. A little bit the same as what I spoke about before. They'd been together a certain amount of time, and just time for a change, different voice, different coach. Simone came on board in January that particular year, 2022, and I didn't get a call until around about the French Open time. So I was back in Adelaide to see if I'd be interested in just doing 3 or 4 weeks over the grass court period with Jannik, with an idea maybe to continue, but not really, just to see how things went. And so when I got across to Eastbourne, actually, was the first time we got together. He lost first round to Tommy Paul there.
Okay.
Not as good as with Simona.
Not as good, not as great a start. But he played well, and Tommy is a good player, and it's on grass. He never won a grass court match in his career. And then he won a few matches at Wimbledon after that. So great young man, down to earth, humble, all the things that, all the core values in a person, not just an athlete, but in a person that you enjoy spending time with. And he's been a pleasure to work with. We talked about the big picture a lot as well. He gets it, absolutely gets it. So great ball striker from the back of the court, made changes to his serve, to his transition game coming forward, to his volley technique, to his slice backhand, being able to play the drop shot a little bit more now, drag his opponent in, all the stuff that we've talked about here today. He's willing to try and become better, throw an occasional serve volley now, even though it doesn't come that natural to him as well, knowing that over the next 10 years, he's going to need to evolve his game to get better to be able to stay at the top of the game. So, and I think Carlos coming on to the tour at such a young age and having everything already has been good for him, because he's been able to see that one style of play doesn't always get it done against everybody, that you need to be good, not great at everything, you need to be great at a few things, but you also need to be good at other stuff as well to be able to have those finishing skills to finish points. So it's been wonderful.
And I will start that one again. To coach a young player,
Yeah.
obviously, like, the mindset is different, and they have to evolve in a
Yeah.
general way around their game.
Yeah.
You started with Jannik at he was young, so it's like the more big picture is very important.
So a lot of the learnings that I had with Lleyton, where I say I could go back and do things differently, I'm doing things better with Jannik. So I'm more experienced now. Communication's better, being able to explain things to him so he understands them in a simple way, keeping the team together, making sure that we're all on the same path, the same trajectory, putting our arms around him. He's been through a difficult time over the last 12 months, so making sure we put our arms around him, protecting him, make sure that he realises that he's done nothing wrong and that he can hold his head up high and walk into the locker room proud of the person he is, has been super important for us as a team. And so, yeah, it's been it's been challenging, but incredibly rewarding experience working with him over the last couple of years, and seeing what he did last year at the Australian Open when he was able to come back from 2 sets down to beat, remarkable. The way Medvedev was playing, changed his game completely. We knew he was going to play more aggressively because he was tired. He'd been to hell and back physically with his matches getting to the final, and Jannik's draw was tough, but his matches weren't as physical, so we knew that physically he was feeling better. And then to find a way to turn that around. And watching him do it, but do it with such calm as well. It's like, how are you doing this? Like, I'm trying to think, my God, I'd be going out of my mind with this. And he's a man well beyond his years with maturity in many ways, but still a kid in many ways as well. And I think that's also really important, that you have to be able to let the young people be themselves and experience life in a way that tennis doesn't consume you, that it's not all about tennis, that you have a life outside tennis as well.
Yeah, probably if you make it probably everything about tennis, at the end it will be like a toxic relationship, and maybe you're able to like sustain it for a couple of years, but at the end you will end up hating it, no? So you have to find that balance.
Yep.
How were you, like last season for him was one of the best seasons in the history of tennis, like results-wise. How were you able to do that with all the pressure, all the noise, no? Of as you said, he had a complicated situation, and I guess that even if you know you did nothing wrong, you might not know, no, what the outcome might be of.
We still don't.
Exactly, no, in a way. So how are you able, like, with all this anxiety or whatever, to be able to still like deliver and play that well? That's amazing.
We ask him that very same question.
That's incredible.
Honestly,
it's already so tough when nothing's going on in your life, and like to be able to do it with so much pressure.
I think sometimes there are some players that find the lines of the tennis court their safe house. They feel comfortable when they walk. So there can be stuff going on in everybody's life. We all have our own problems, right? Regardless of your players or coaches, there are things that you have to deal with. But sometimes when you walk onto the tennis court, some players take those things onto the court and they can't perform great. They can't put them in compartments. Some players go, all right, this is happening over here. Oh my God, I'm back on the court, let's go. I've got the one opponent over there. This is what I'm going to do today. This is what I love doing. And this is what he loves doing. This is his purpose in life, is to get out there and compete and play hard and enjoy himself. And so it has been remarkable. I think he gave me this quote. I didn't tell him this quote. This is coming from a 23-year-old, because we have been talking about all the noise. Yeah. Some from players, some from coaches, some from the media around his particular case at the moment. And his is a involuntary contamination. So a lot of the times these, when you return a positive test, it's from medicine or supplement. So it's voluntary contamination. So there's always a ban that applies to that, whether it's 1 month or a little bit longer. His is involuntary. And not only is it involuntary, it's from a person who gave a spray to treat a physio for a cut finger, and then somehow that got pushed across to Jannik. So WADA will go back and they'll start it all again and do the whole particular case, and we're confident that Jannik did everything possible to avoid it. So we'll see how it comes out. But he said to me the other day that don't concern yourself with the criticism of someone that you wouldn't take advice from.
Yeah, true.
I'm looking at, oh my God, are you 23 years of age? Yeah, I know that's a quote that's out there, but to come from him is like, okay, let's move on.
And to be able to interiorize it, right? Because quotes are very nice, but to be able to live with it inside and you like be conscious about it, it's not easy.
Yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
he's a mature young man. He's a good young man. I know Italy is very proud of him, and they should be.
I mean, there's nothing not to be proud of that guy.
Exactly,
It's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we wish you like a lot of good luck for this season with him.
Wonderful podcast. Well done, and well done with everything you guys are doing.
Thank you. Well, we do always ask one last question, which is what advice would you give to your younger self or to younger players coming up?
One piece of advice:
Yeah.
Yes.
keep the joy. Put a smile on your face, enjoy every moment that you get to do it, because it doesn't last long enough, regardless of how long your career is. You'll get to the point where you can't do this anymore professionally, and every day you'll look back and go, I wish I could get back onto the court and compete. I'm 59 years of age. I still walk onto the court with the balls when Jannik's getting ready to walk onto the court, and I smack a few balls with the coach just to hit 4 or 5 balls and go, I wish I was able to play today, because you miss it. Tennis is a sport for life, and it stays with you forever. And the fact that these guys are getting to go out and compete, travel the world, stay in nice hotels, make some money, put some money in the bank, set themselves up for the future, it's the best time of your life. So keep the joy, no matter how difficult the period is.
I like that advice. Yeah, me every time I go on court with her from the outside, I get like the chills. Like imagine playing here.
Do you play?
Yeah, I'm a very bad amateur.
Sorry. Does he play?
Yes.
Is he good?
I used to. No, I'm not good.
I mean, he stopped playing he played a lot as a kid, and he stopped a lot and moved to paddle.
Yeah.
So
my grip is destroyed
the foreign
now.
grip, we are fixing it now.
All right, good.
But for me sometimes and last year was on court for me was tough, and I had a kind of toxic relation with tennis.
Yeah.
And at the end, sometimes I was like, he was asking me to play. I was like, don't talk to me about tennis. We do not talk about it.
I had to wait 2 years to get to
I was
hit
like,
one day.
this is not happening. And then when I took more time of my tennis, we went back on court. And for me to see how excited he was for him to play, I was like, I forgot,
It's a game.
His emotion, his eyes, playing tennis, just and after practice, he was like, I was doing much better today, my form.
You had to step outside of your body to see the joy it brought somebody else.
I kind of forgot, for me, it was all negative emotion, he was lost. And to see someone else doing it.
I'm like a 5-year-old kid on court,
And the joy about it, I was like,
oh, that's great.
Yeah, I forgot about my adventure, my way. So it was good, and he's improving a lot. The grip is better.
I have a very good coach. I hope she doesn't coach in the future because the traveling is tough.
Yeah, that's great.
But she has a lot of potential. She's amazing.
Yeah,
she has a lot of empathy. And
Keep that in the podcast. That's a great story.
Yeah.
No, that's a great story.
Sometimes you forget when you're in in the everyday environment, and you want to improve, you want to win tournaments, and the environment maybe everyone needs it different, but everyone is kind of stressed. So you step there and you're like, oof.
Exactly.
And you have to remember.
It's not just tennis, it's all sports.
Yeah.
All sports. So the window is small. We only get to do this for a certain amount of time. So enjoy every second of it, for sure.
Yeah.
Well done.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Darren. It's
pleasure.
been an honor to have you in the podcast.
Thank you so
Anytime.
much.
My pleasure, and well
Thank
done with
you.
everything you guys are doing.
Thank you.
very
Good luck
much.
this season.
Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next episodes. And it will mean the world to me if you can share this episode with someone you think will enjoy it. Thank you, and see you soon!